Welcome, everybody. My name is Stephen Dargan, and I am head of Bankwest Contact Centres. Unfortunately, I cannot be there with you today in person, so you're going to have to put up with me speaking to you virtually. I hope you're enjoying the conference to date, and I hope today that you get something, no matter how big or small, from this presentation. Today, I'm going to talk to you around how we set up the business to be operationally resilient, flexible enough then to withstand times of change, and great change indeed, what we've had over the last number of months, as you all would agree. Today I'm going to talk to you about just a bit of background about Bankwest, a bit of background on the Bankwest contact centres. I won't spend too much time on those particular slides because we've only got 25 minutes. I'm going to spend a bit more time around our pathway to operational excellence and how we set the business up for sustainable growth, and then where to next. And then obviously then we'll open up for some Q&A. So who is Bankwest? Bankwest is part of the CBA group. We were set up about 125 years ago as the Agricultural Bank of Western Australia. We moved to Bankwest in 1994, then Commonwealth Bank bought us from HBOS in 2008. We have over 1.1 million customers nationwide, and people don't realize, even though we're a Western Australian bank, we've got 50% of our customers residing on the East Coast, which is fantastic. So it's a split 50-50, which is great. Our strategy is to be a simple, friendly, everyday bank for customers who own or aspire to own a home. Our purpose is to improve the financial well-being of our customers and communities, and our vision is to deliver brilliant customer experiences every day. So a little bit about the contact centres. So we are a team of 308 colleagues. We have offices in Sydney and Perth, but we've representatives and colleagues dotted across every single state in Australia, including New Zealand actually, and which is fantastic. So the new way of working has definitely helped us span our control of where our colleagues work from, which is fantastic. We have 153 colleagues working from home now, full-time basis, which is great. The longest serving colleague is 38 years, the youngest is 17, the oldest is 74. We were voted best broker bank best contact center bank in Australia in 2019 and 2020. We won the WA Oz Contact Award for Customer Experience in 2019. We take over 1.4 million calls per annum, 18,000 broker chats, 565,000 digital chats, 86,000 emails, 480,000 online chats, and also 35,000 social media conversations. And that's one of our biggest growing platforms over the last 18 months, which is fantastic. And one of my sayings is the contact center is the jewel in the crown of any organization, primarily because of the sheer volume of customer data that you get every single day. So what I'll do now is talk to you about what we have done over the last number of years when we started our journey, and where we've actually ended up and where our next steps are. So if I look at our NPS over the last 3 to 4 years, in July 2017, we started off at an NPS of in the low 20s. And since we went on this journey, we've steadily grown our NPS to now 68. It tipped over 70 during COVID, but it's hovering in around the 68 mark. I won't go through the data as regards. There's lots of improvements that we've made. We've redesigned the phone menu, but when we did that, we actually got about 4,000 or 5,000 customers feedback, and we built the IVR based off that feedback. We got real live customer testing in that as well, so that was a great value add and improved the service proposition for our customers. We moved to a 24/7 service proposition, so we are there 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, which is fantastic, and that helps with our international customers as well. We increased all our digital offerings. We introduced broker home loan retention, redesigned the customer identification process, and also implemented this year virtual hold, which was a massive help to us during the COVID period. So where will I go to at the start? So when we looked at the operational excellence journey and how we set the business up for success, I really thought of, well, I really want to get it at a really basic level. So we asked ourselves we created 4 questions essentially, which we asked ourselves back then in 2016, 2017. And those are we focused on activities that add value for our customers and the business? Do we have efficient processes and are they performed consistently? Are people focused on the right activities at the right time? And am I personally contributing to productivity? Now, if we could answer yes to all of those, that was a positive. But and still to this day, we can't answer yes to all those. Confidently, hand on heart, we still can't answer yes to all those. So they were the 4 questions we first asked ourselves back then. Back then, we could not answer any of them as a yes. So we had 4 clear no's. So we knew we had a lot of work to do. So we then created what's called the 4 productivity habits. Now, these are basic, fundamental mindsets and tools really for our colleagues across the organization or across the contact center to really try and embed the concept of continuous improvement. And those are visual management boards. So every single team will have a visual management board. That visual management board would be pretty static. And that's we learned a lot when we rolled it out first. We rolled it out to different teams who did different tasks for customers. That was probably the biggest failing at the time because we mandated what that VMB or visual management board looked like. What we learned was you got to let your team design the VMB to suit them. So we created what's required, a minimum standard. So in the visual management board, it must have voice of customer. So you must be talking about what your promoters are, what your detractors are, and what your passives are. And out of that voice of customer must drive actions. So any VMB you see in my area will always have voice of customer, but it'll also have corresponding actions on how we're going to improve the service proposition or improve the processes for our customers. Huddles. Huddles are big. You call them pulses. We call them pulses or huddles or stand-ups or whatever you like to call them. But generally, every single team in the contact center would have a 15-minute huddle, minimum of once a week. They'll come to the VMB. They'll talk about voice of customer. They'll talk about their metrics and how they're performing to the CVP. And they'll also talk about any risk items or anything that's happening on at that time. Continuous improvement. We set up a continuous improvement framework. So we created a SharePoint platform where all continuous improvement ideas could be registered and we could track them through to fruition. So we promoted heavily colleagues coming up with their own ideas, but not passing it off to a productivity team that's sat in the corner. We helped them coach and support them to solve their own problems, which kind of empowered them to do their own improvements, so to speak. Standard operating procedures, which most of you would probably be really good at, I would assume so. Most contact centers would be very efficient at having standard operating procedures. But we created a SOP, standard operating procedure framework. So they're all housed in one central location. We call it a Genius platform. Each standard operating procedure is reviewed at least half yearly. They are owned by a certain individual, and the risk and controls on each of the processes monitored, so no change can be made to any process without understanding the up and downstream impacts to that process and also the risk and controls to that process. So that's all a very tightly governed system, I suppose. I know I said 4 productivity habits, but the last one there I sneakily put in. And that's around the mindset and behaviors of our leaders. So we have recently, in the last couple of years, we've reintroduced the 5th productivity habit for leaders, and that is around Gemba. Gemba is a Japanese term, for those of you who don't know, where it's going to the work. We're going to see where the work is performed, but it's going with 2 key things. It's going with humility and it's going with curiosity. So it's getting our leaders to really understand, go to Gemba, really sit down with our colleagues and agents, understanding the process and the pain points that they're working under, and then taking that away back to the Pulse board, back to the VMB leadership team, and talk about how we're going to improve the processes for our customers and our colleagues. So I have there's a famous guy called Edward Deming, and one of his famous quotes is, "Never blame people, blame process," because he measured all the defects in processes in corporates many years ago, and 95% of the time the defect was caused by a poor process or poor system setup. So only 5% was caused by an actual human being. So never blame people, blame process. So if the colleagues or the leaders go and understand the processes that the colleagues are working within, help fix the processes, the behavior and the culture will improve overall. Then we said, right, what are we going to do from a colleague perspective? What are we going to teach them regarding, lean tools? How are we going to get them the capability to be able to do that continuous improvement themselves? So we set about creating just basic tools. There was 4 basic tools that we taught them. Every single colleague knows how to do a problem statement, knows how to do a fishbone, which is a cause and effect diagram, knows how to do 5 whys, which is root cause analysis, really to make sure that we're solving the root cause of each problem. So we're not doing a band-aid solution, and leaders, being senior leaders, are very good at knowing, think they know that they have the answers, and they'll go and make changes to a process or system, when in fact they haven't actually solved the root cause of the problem, and they only make the problem worse. So what we've created is a framework for around teaching the colleagues how to use the main productivity problem solving tools, which is the problem statement, fishbone, 5 whys, and then when you come up with your solutions, how to do a pick matrix and identify which solutions to run with. So that was fine from a colleague perspective. And then we said, right, how do we get them to get a deeper capability? Because so when we look at the contact center, we can have everyone doing continuous improvements, that's fine. But sometimes you want to get a real deeper level of capability build. So we introduced the belt concept. And those of you who are familiar with Lean Six Sigma, there's different colored belts. So the yellow belt, the green belt, and the black belt. The yellow belt is typically done with a A3 practical problem solving tool. You can Google that. Toyota use it really well. And that goes through the DMAIC process: define, measure, analyze, improve, and control. So that is the DMAIC. That is the lean methodology which we use for problem solving and fixing processes. So typically a yellow belt project will be anywhere up to 100,000 in dollar value. And what we mean by dollar value, that could be anything to do with customer experience, revenue uplift, risk mitigation, risk improvement, anything along those lines. We then so the yellow belt is internally assessed, so that we have our green belts sit around and review the yellow belt project. Each of the stages of DMAIC they will have what's called a toll gate, where the yellow belt trainee will present back their findings at each of the stage, and the green belts then will determine whether they have passed, they've used the right tools, they've used the right mindsets, and they've gone the right way about solving the problem. If they've ticked all those boxes, they will then move to the next stage to measure, to analyze, improve, and control. At the end of that, then they present the full project and they get signed off as a yellow belt, and that's an internally recognized capability program. Then we go to the green belt program, which is a bit more in depth. So that's about $400,000 worth of benefit. That's externally assessed. So the green belt will go through the same process. We'll go through DMAIC, DMAIC, go through toll gates, present to master black belts, and green belts as part of their toll gate. They will then do a 90-minute exam, which is through University of Cardiff and SA Partners in Sydney. And they will also do a learning log, which is like a thesis of their project, basically. And those get sent off to the University of Cardiff to be externally assessed and marked and scored. So it's an externally recognized capability. It's great for the colleagues because they get one of the key sought after skills on their CV. And it really helps them develop their lean operational excellence mindsets, and really gives them a deep understanding of how to solve problems the right way. Then we go to the black belt, which is generally more strategic. So when I look at green belts is very very vertical. So it's you do a project within your area, whereas a black belt might cross multi functions, and it's more strategic. Generally, $1 million minimum benefit, and that is generally led by a qualified black belts. I'm one of those black belts in Bankwest. We have another 8 or 9 black belts, I think we have. And we will lead that project generally, and we'll have green belt trainees as part of the project team. It's a cross-functional, generally more strategic type projects, again assessed externally through SA Partners and the University of Cardiff. Black belts, generally, to get a black belt certificate, you have to do 3 externally recognized projects greater than 10 times cost, which is quite detailed and it's quite tough to get. But the skill set is obviously much deeper. So that was great from an individual perspective. So we thought, right, how do we get the teams across the contact center all, on this way of thinking? So we have the individual, but how do you get the teams motivated? So we then created a team maturity assessment pathway. So when you look at the bronze, silver, gold, and I'll talk about Shingo later on, you look at the language in bronze. So bronze is all about the what's. So it's around in places. Productivity is done in pockets. Some of the team have started actively using the tools, and the team are contributing to continuous improvement. That is assessed just by an online survey, and you score yourself out of 5 across 5 core competencies. So those 4 or 5 competencies I'll talk about now in a second in the next slide. But that is generally the basic foundation of the maturity assessments. We saw the greatest shift in our leadership capability, but also the mindsets and behaviors across the contact center when we moved into the silver journey. The silver is when it really starts to embed. You're starting to get a lot more colleagues across the floor with the deeper knowledge of understanding of how to make problem solving, do it the right way, and the operational excellence mindsets and behaviors. And if you look at the productivity is well established, it's continually improving, the language is changing, it's all about the what and the how. Majority of the team are actively using the tools and looking to solve, make tomorrow better than today. The teams are steadily improving, leaders know why they're doing it, and the leaders are heavily driving this at the start. Then you move into what's called gold, which again, sorry, what I meant to say is the silver assessment is done by internal independent assessors. So we have about 8 internally accredited assessors. I'm one of those as well. So I will go into a business external to contact center. Obviously, I won't do my own business, and I will spend a week in that business randomly talking to colleagues, attending all the meetings, attending all the VMBs and huddles. I will then interview all the leadership team. I'll interview a sample of colleagues, probably around 50% of the team, and I'll basically score them out of 5 again and assess where they are in that maturity curve. So gold then, as you move into gold, obviously that's a bit deeper again. So gold is all around the behaviors, the systems, and the principles, which I'll talk about now in a second. The biggest shift, as I said, was around that shift into silver accreditation. That's when we really started to see the benefit coming through from our customer experience perspective, but also from a colleague engagement perspective. So really, to go from bronze to Shingo is a multi-year program. But if I encourage you to even start on the bronze and even get to silver, you will see a massive shift in the culture of your organization or your division or your team just moving towards that silver accreditation program. You don't need to take anything down. This presentation will be shared to you, so you're more than welcome to have it. But silver accreditation is around 5 core competencies. That is customer focus, productivity capability, process management, productivity mindsets and behaviors, and productivity leadership. When I look at customer focus, that's every single team understanding what the customer is trying to pull from your system. It's every single team understanding what their customer value proposition is, who the customers are, because you'd be surprised how many colleagues across your organization don't know who their actual customers are. It's actively using voice of customer. It's daily looking at what are our customers telling us. Are they telling us this particular process is broken? Well, what are we doing about it to fix it? So that's really understanding the customer itself, understanding the voice of customer, and actually actioning off the back of that. Productivity capability is around, the productivity programs are well established. People are using the tools. They're using Fishbones. They're using 5 Whys. They're using, Plan, Do, Check, Act, which is a productivity framework. They're using, Pick Matrix. They're using swim lanes, process mapping. So generally, the tools are quite well used across your division. Then you look at process management. Have you got your SOPs in place? And most of you would score pretty high in process management. Generally, contact centers do. You would have standard operating procedures, but are they governed? Do they align to your risk and controls? Do they map up and downstream impacts? When I make a change in this department, does it affect Department A, Department B, and Department C? And how does it affect Department A's and so forth? Where are they stored? Are they stored centrally? Are they all in different, you'll find one team has it in OneNote, one does it on Word doc, one does it on a SharePoint. And then what happens then is you get all 10 different answers for the same process. So are they stored centrally? Are they actively reviewed? Are they owned by individuals? And are they tightly governed? So that's really around that. Standard operating procedures. Then, our processes use process maps. So they all owned. Do they have your risk and controls overlaid on them? And what's the impact to your key processes as well? Then I look at productivity mindsets and behaviors. Are the 4 productivity habits that I talked about earlier, are they well established? Have we got a CI system, a continuous improvement system in place? Are CI behaviors recognized? Because you got to recognize your CIs. You got to recognize colleagues for doing good stuff. Do we call them out? So, I send a weekly note out recognizing our colleagues. We have CI champions. We have CI awards. Colleagues love to be celebrated. So are we shouting about that out loud? And are we having daily huddles, talking about CIs, moving them up and down? Are we actually making all our processes better? I talk to my teams a lot around the persistent pursuit of perfection. There's no such thing as perfection, right? It's the persistent pursuit of trying to get there. And as long as every single colleague has that in the back of their mind, that's their mindset of we've got to continually improve, the results will just follow. You might fix a process one day, but that's not to say you've dusted it off and you've locked it in a drawer and forget about it, set and forget for another 12 months. It's then looking at that process, right? We've made it from A to B, right? How do we get it from B to C to D to E and F and so on? And how do we continually, persistently improve our processes for our customers tomorrow to make tomorrow better than today, essentially? Then the biggest one for me is around productivity leadership. Are your leaders walking the talk, or are they just giving hot air? And there is a lot of leaders out there that would actually go, they do it because it's a badge of honor, and they'll do it because they Johnny down the road has got silver accreditation, and he'll it's a badge of honor, and the senior leaders like it, so I'm going to jump on the bandwagon, I should say. This is really around, are the leaders actually walking the talk? Are they going to Gemba? Are they doing the tools themselves? My leadership team, we use Fishbone, 5Y, Pick Matrix every single week. Are they actually leading as they're supposed to lead? Are they developing our colleagues? Are they coaching colleagues? Are they, has every colleague got a strong development plan in place? Are they leading with humility? Humility is the biggest piece for me. It's really understanding, are they taking on that feedback? We don't have all the answers. Leaders don't have all the answers by any stretch of the imagination. We might think we do, but we don't. It's the people, the agents on the phone who are talking to the customers day in, day out. They've got all the answers. It's creating the environment for them to feel safe to speak up and make a difference. And as long as the leaders are creating that environment, people engagement starts to flourish. People feel empowered. They just want to do more. And it's just a beautiful thing to watch. When you go through this journey, you will see the leadership time spent in 3 different systems change, right? Now, I talk about 3 different systems. I talk about the systems of work, I talk about the systems of improvement, and I talk about the systems of thinking and behavior. When you start bronze, and a lot of people will resonate with this, the leaders and you guys are probably all spending about 70% plus of your time in work, on the dance floor, firefighting, jumping from Billy to Jack to Joe, stressed, reactive, very reactive management. But as you move through that journey, you will see your leadership change in the time spent in work to more time spent in the systems of thinking and behavior and the systems of improvement. And that's when you start to see the shift going through the silver maturity assessment. Is my leaders now are spending more time in on coaching and development, more time in on the strategic thinking, more time in on helping colleagues develop. And a good friend of mine always talks around, we're planting seeds that you never see, or trees that you never see grow. And that's essentially what we're doing. Yes, at the moment, our attrition rate has actually gone up at the moment, but it's internal attrition because our mindsets and behaviors that we've created and developed in the contact center is now highly sought after across the organization. So I think in January alone, we've got 11 of our colleagues all moving into different roles that have been promoted, which is fantastic. But it gives me another problem at the other end because I have to backfill these people. But as long as I'm developing these people with the right mindsets and right behaviors, they'll go off into their own new teams and across the organization, and the organization and our customers will be better off in the long run. But this data that you see on screen this was actually created by all the different businesses that went Shingo Prize. And it's not actually made up data, it's actually real life data on the leadership time and the leaders, managers and colleagues time along those different platform or different maturity assessments. So you will see that change. The three questions I always ask, or we ask ourselves, is: do we have clear simple systems of improvement that everyone can use? Do we have clear simple system of improvement that everyone can see? And do leaders at all levels proactively seek to embed these in Bankwest every day? So if we're ticking yes to all those three questions, we're doing a good job. So what was the benefit before? Well, if I look at July 2019, when I took over the contact center in May, I think it was 2019, agents were measured on AHT. We had high repeat callers, low first point resolution. NPS was in the low 40s. Sick leave remained in the mid-teens. I think it was hovering around 16% at the time. We were negative 30 FTE to meet demand coming into the organization. So there was a lot of pressure and stress on the contact center. The occupancy levels were quite high. I think we were hitting 98% occupancy, which again further drove the sick leave up, as you will all know. And there were some pockets of poor discipline and behaviors. But overall, the sense of there was great behaviors at a leadership level, but there were still colleagues some colleagues that had pockets of poor behaviors. So when I took over, we said, right, let's get on that silver journey, because I knew that when we go on that journey, we'll start to really embed the right behaviors. We got rid of recruitment, redesigned our recruitment process as well. So we looked at, I'm not going to recruit anymore on technical ability. I don't want particularly, people coming from other contact centers tend to know how to play the game, and particularly those who have been there for a long time. Know how to play the system. So what I really wanted was colleagues that really embed the values and the behaviors that we created, and the behaviors. So we started to recruit on behaviors rather than technical ability, and that the effect of that was that our attrition rate started to reduce. We had less HR cases, so our leaders then spent more time on doing what they should be doing, coaching and development, and overall engagement went up because there was no longer that poor behaviors in place. So we created the right behavioral set that we wanted to do. The benefits, I'll just quickly touch on. The NPS obviously for the last year jumped up to nearly 68 from the low 40s. Average speed to answer started at 509, that reduced down to 45 seconds. Abandon rate was up at 21%, again, because the pressure on the system back then, that reduced to 4%. The absence rate reduced to 6%. The AHT kind of was pretty static in around the late 300 marks. That has actually seen quite a bit of an increase lately because we've added more additional work in. So that's given us another challenge now regarding FTE. The FTE count at the start of negative 30 FTE, we clawed that back to a positive 10, which was fantastic through that operational excellence journey. And that was through colleagues coming up with continuous improvements, making processes better, creating capacity. And I always said to the teams that any capacity that we create through operational excellence, we will never, ever harvest, all right? The biggest killer to this program is when leaders go and create capacity and they go, great, I've after gotten 10 FTEs capacity, now let's reduce our FTE by 10. That will kill your culture straight away, because colleagues will no longer want to come up with these ideas and create capacity because they'll know, oh, my job's not going to be secure. So I made the firm commitment at the start that any capacity that we create for the contact center will be reinvested back into the colleagues themselves to take them off the phones more during the week to do continuous improvement. So which then creates a self-perpetuating continuous improvement framework, which is fantastic. Colleague engagement scores lifted from 76 to 84%, which is fantastic during that period. And the recent temperature check as well went up again further. So colleagues are really loving the fact that they can affect change themselves. They're loving the empowerment. They're loving the way the leaders have more time to support them and coach them and mentor them. They're loving the way they can speak up. They can challenge me. They challenge me every day, and they're not afraid of that, which is great. And I'll take all feedback as a gift, and all my leaders will take it as a gift, and we'll do something about it and to improve their lives. And I think once they start to realize and start to see the leaders walking the talk and doing that, the engagement levels again start to increase again, which is fantastic. All those metrics hit the top quartile in the financial services sector in Australia and New Zealand, and in the fifth quadrant global benchmarking as well, which was fantastic. So I set a very aspirational goal back in May 2019 to be global best in class, and those numbers certainly hit the mark there. So gave the team the belief that the journey that we were on was the right journey. But that didn't stop there. So it's kind of like, again, a continuous improvement journey is a journey that never ends. So you don't just get to silver and go, right, that's us done. Let's just relax and sit back and we'll drink coffee. But no, we continually, again, it's the persistent pursuit of perfection. So how do you create a culture that when I leave, when my leadership team leaves, that the culture still remains? So I turn to what's called this guy here on screen, Shigeo Shingo, or whatever you want to pronounce it. Shigeo Shingo is a guy. He probably never. I don't think you'll ever see a photograph of Shigeo smiling. This is probably the best photograph you'll see of him. But he was one of the founding partners of Toyota Lean Principles. He's got about 13 or 14 books in Japanese, which all have been translated into English. And the University of Utah Huntsman Business School has created a Shingo Prize, Shingo University, so to speak, in his honor. Shingo is all around behaviors and principles. So I wanted to create sustainable growth. So I wanted a business that was going to continue on. When the leaders are not even there, the business runs itself. And when you go past silver to Shingo, the colleagues drive the business. I mean, you could walk into my business today and you wouldn't actually notice which one's a leader and which one's a colleague, because they're all the colleagues are driving the business. You will walk in, you'll see them doing fish bones, 5 whys in huddles, problem solving, looking at customer data. It's just, and you can feel the vibrancy, you can feel it, you can cut the culture with a knife when you walk through the door, which is fantastic. You would not be able to recognize, as I said, a leader on the floor. One of his key sayings is the 4 goals of improvement must be to make things easier, better, faster, and cheaper, in that order. I urge you to go and look into the Shingo principles. Shingo is really around results. There's three main components, which is, results require ideal behaviors. So I'm going to look at the results of an organization depend on the way its people behave, as you know. So if you create the right behaviors, the results will start to follow. Purpose and systems drive behaviors. It's long been understood that the beliefs of an individual have a profound effect on behavior, but it's not widely understood that systems and processes have an equally profound effect on behavior. Fix the process, fix the system, behavior will change. When we often teach our leaders to be great people, one-to-one, people managers, and bring them into a one-to-one and teach them how to do a one-to-one, yet we send the colleagues back into a system that's fundamentally broken. So what I try and teach my leaders is go and understand the systems, understand the processes that the colleagues are working in, fix them, make them better, help them solve the problems for themselves, and your culture and your behaviors will start to change. Principles will inform ideal behavior. Principles are the foundations and rules that govern all consequences. So the more deeply they understand the principles, the more clearly he or she understands ideal behaviors that they need to drive. So that's basically what the foundations of Shingo. Shingo's around 3 key dimensions, which I'll talk about just briefly. And I think you might have Chris Butterworth doing a workshop of some sort. And I'd urge you to go. If you haven't gone, reach out to Chris. He is a Shingo master himself. So he is he's probably one of my strongest mentors, so to speak. And I look up to a lot of Chris. and I'm on the phone to him quite regularly, just to run things past him on how we're tracking towards our ideal behaviors. But to just talking about the three key there's 10 key principles under 3 dimensions. The first dimension is cultural enablers, and that's really about two core principles: leading with humility and respecting each individual. So leading with humility is probably one of the biggest ones for me. That's, again, as I spoke about earlier, we don't have all the answers, colleagues do. And that's really leaders acknowledging that and being humble, being able to take feedback on, and, you know, good, bad, indifferent, just take it on board and action it and do it. And, you know, making sure that you get that voice of colleague, you get that, you know, feedback in, you're taking on board, and you're actually doing something with it. Respecting each individual is probably another one that it's equally as important. But that's around seeing people in a different way. And there's a Dr. Morgan Jones who has written a lot of books. He used to be in CBA, and I'm very fond advocate of Dr. Morgan Jones. But he often spoke around that there's a Kenyan saying, and some of you may know this, called Sawubona, and forgive me if I haven't pronounced that correctly. But Sawubona is a Kenyan greeting, but it means I see you. But it means more than just I see you. It means I see your past, I see your present, and I see your potential. So when you start looking at individuals in that way, you start to look at them completely differently. You start to look at colleagues going, right, how do I develop them? How do I plant that tree that I'll never see? How do I really get them to develop beyond their capabilities? And yes, you'll probably increase your attrition, but hopefully that's internal attrition across your organization, which is fantastic. And as I say to my leaders, the sign of a good leader is not how many followers they have, it's how many leaders they create. So it's really around, how do you develop your colleagues? How do you set them up for success? How do you bring them on board? Do they have the right tools when they're on board? Or do they have the right training when they're on board? Or do they have the right capabilities and the tools and the techniques to be able to do their job as best as they can? And there's a business in the US that actually has changed their structure charts. They've inverted their structure charts with the leaders at the bottom and the colleagues at the top. And that was a great symbol of respecting each individual. It was a great symbol of leading with humility. They also refer to homeless people as people without a home. And it's like a credit manager is a person who manages credit. They're actual genuine people. So it's really seeing them in a different light. The next dimension is around continuous improvement. So assuring quality at source. So making sure that defects don't come into your system, and making sure that anything that if a widget is passed from person A to person B, that it's passed clean. If I can think of water through a pipe, it's creating that continuous flow, making sure that the data coming in, or the widget coming into your system or into your process, is clean coming in, because when it's clean, it flows through and we get throughput a lot faster. Improve flow and pull, so making sure that the widget goes from A to B to C to D without interruptions or without stopping. I'm not a fan, my leadership team will tell you, I'm not a fan of queue systems. I'm not a fan of sending it digitally into, it's sitting in the credit manager's queue, and SLAs is another one. I'm not a fan of SLAs. It's 24 hours sitting in the queue. Oh, but I'm in SLA. No, you're not, because the customer is waiting. Anywhere there's waiting is a big no-no for me. So how do we create continuous flow? Because ultimately your customers will benefit in the long run. Seek perfection, again, persistent pursuit of perfection. Once you create a process or improve a process, don't just stop there, continue on. Embrace scientific thinking is all around, have we used the right tools? Have we used the right mindsets and behaviors to problem solve, using Fishbone's 5 whys and so forth, root cause analysis, and focus on process. Again, as I said before, never blame people, blame process. The last one is around enterprise alignment. So I look at create constancy of purpose. So constancy of purpose is around, everybody aligned to that true north. Everybody in your business is having the same vision, the values, understanding where they're going. It's like rowing a boat. If everybody in the boat is rowing the same way, you'll get to your destination on time. If one or two people are rowing in a different direction, chaos is going to happen. So that's the vertical alignment. Then I look at thinking systemically. Thinking systemically is all around the horizontal alignment. So if I make a change in the contact center, how does it impact my up and downstream teams? It's really about embedding those, even though they're not they're separate teams reporting into a different lead or reporting into a different business. It's how do I mentally embed those people into my business? So anytime I'm doing something, I'm always thinking of those people. I'm always thinking of how does it impact that team down the line. We often get it. I know you often get it. The marketing department does a change and never tells us. And all of a sudden our calls are through the roof the next day. It's literally how do you actually bring everybody along that journey, making sure your up and downstream impacts are noted and everybody understands that flow. The last one's around creating value for customer, because if you do all those other principles, you'll create value for your customer. So that's basically it. The key takeouts from me: empower your teams to speak up and make a difference. You don't have all the answers. I certainly don't. They do. Build key behavioral indicators, not just KPIs, but key behavioral indicators, and measure them. And I'm happy to talk about to people after this around how do you actually create key behavioral indicators and how do you measure them. When you're at the top of your game, you change your game. So one of the legacy, those are your James Kerr's book, Legacy, is one of my favorite books. And that's, when you're at the top of your game, you're hitting all your performance metrics. That's when you change. That's when you got to flip and you got to go, right, how do we make it even better? Swap your leaders around. I've done that quite a lot. A leader is doing really well in an area, swap them into a different team, because when they go into a different team, they see things that other people don't. So, and you start to create more improvements, which is how you exponentially improve your continuous improvement framework. Remember, it's the persistent pursuit of perfection. It's something that you'll never achieve, but it's how you're going to persistently try to get there. And there's 3 sayings that I always say in my team: never blame people, blame process. Culture change is free, and continuous improvement is a journey that never ends. Thanks there. I hope you got something out of that today. I'll now open up for Q&A. I'll also be available offline if anyone wants to touch base with me directly. LinkedIn profile is there as well. I'm happy to have a chat with you. I have spoken to other organizations off the last CCW last year who have since gone on their operational excellence journey. I've started to see benefits as well. So more than happy to take any calls after this. So hope you enjoy your conference and look forward to the Q&A. Thank you.